just watched the Diddy documentary, and it's a mad thing, right? There's so much that happened that I didn't even know happened, bro. Right? And I thought I knew everything about this story. I think the craziest experience for me is at the beginning of the documentary. I was hearing some of the stories, and I'm thinking, bro, there's no way that happened. That sounds too crazy to be real in this life. Like, some of the stories just sounded like not unbelievable, but exaggerated in a way, right? You're thinking there's no way that happened to you. There's no way that happened. There were so many witnesses and so many people around you, and that still took place. I was like, no way, come on. I was saying maybe half of that happened, but not the way that you're explaining it. I think you've added a bit for imagination. However, at the end of the documentary, bro, I was like, lock this man up. And I'll explain why, bro. It's the consistency between the stories. Like, he did that stuff. It sounds like a pattern. It started to, there was a pattern that behold, and the events just got bigger because he kept getting away with it. So the more he gets away with it, the bigger it gets. And another thing I hated is that being a friend of his almost seems like a curse. And I feel like that's why 50 made the documentary. On top of the victims, being around Diddy is like a virus. Everyone ends up worse off than they were before they met him, from what I'm seeing, right? So one of the main stories that absolutely shocked me was this one about Lil Rod, or Lil Rod. You might call him Lil Rod. I call him Lil Rod. Rodney Lillard Jones. Now, he used to work closely with P. Diddy, and he tells a story of one day being in a studio session. They used to do day-to-day studio sessions. He used to help Diddy with all kinds of things, recording, producing, day-to-day stuff, right? But they're in a studio session one day. Now, Lil Rod is mixing. He was on the engineer deck picking sounds. Next thing, Diddy and a colleague walk into the back room. Gunshots are heard in the middle of the studio. They're not outside. They're not on the street. They're in the studio, and they're mid-session. And people are ducking around. People are running around, panicking. And according to Lil Rod, it was just normalized. Obviously, for him, he's from the streets. So this is all normal to him. He starts asking for towels. Let me help out. Let me do this. Let me do that and the other. But people are ducking, running, panicking. The police arrive. The ambulances arrive. There's no report. When the ambulance initially arrived, they actually waited for the police to get there. Lil Rod had to go downstairs and plead with them. Say, guys, the guy's gonna die if you wait for the police. Nevertheless, I believe that all came to fruition, right? And he says the entire thing got swept under the rug and never mentioned again. No one talked about it. Diddy ain't saying nothing. And he specifically remembers Diddy telling him, don't breathe a word of this. And if you do, it didn't happen here. The shooting didn't happen here. So obviously they could get time to clean it up, change the crime scene whatsoever. For me, that made Lil Rod somewhat of an accomplice for that shooting. I'm not gonna lie. And I feel like this is the main theme around everyone around Diddy. They've sold their souls, their values, and everything about them for clout. This promise that a billionaire is gonna give them their wildest dreams. They're willing to throw away their values, throw away doing the right thing, throw away protecting others. And you can see, and there's another incident where Lil Rod remembers being so gone off whatever he was drinking and wherever he was taking around these freak-off parties that he had no memory of what happened to him the next day. He would wake up in the bed, he said in the documentary, right? Sometimes P. Diddy was in the bed with him. Sometimes there was another guy. Sometimes there was a bunch of girls in the bed. Now, it doesn't matter who you're in the bed with. Girls, guys, I think we're past that age of, disrespecting people for their preferences. Love who you love, like what you like. My issue is, where is your memory gone? You're an adult man in a situation where you don't even have full control because you've sold yourself for the clout. And I really, really recommend that you speak to someone professionally, because nevertheless, despite the fact that you were there willingly, I'm sure there were a lot of things that happened to you that you probably didn't even know or were outside of your control. It's not necessarily your fault. You could have done more to avoid it, but it's not your fault what someone else did to you, right? So that one just shocked me because I just didn't see that coming. Both parts of the story. There was another one which involved locked doors. Now, we all know about this one, right? P. Diddy loves his little locked doors. I think there was a story told about witnesses who were interviewed about, they just called it a house of locked doors. A former witness, assistant of P. Diddy's, was interviewed, and she didn't want to be named. She wanted her name to be kept private for safety, so I'm not going to say it in this video, of course, but she explains a time where P. Diddy's mansion had doors and the staff were banned from opening them. Only Diddy had the keys, and you couldn't go in there without him telling you. No explanation, no instructions, just you do not open these doors unless Mr. Combs tell you. She also mentions one room specifically full of locked boxes, tapes, equipment, all kinds of archives that nobody was allowed to look at. Now, these tapes, I reckon, are probably one of the main reasons why a lot of celebrities stayed silent when Diddy got arrested and during the whole situation, right? For someone who had his hands in a lot of pockets of a lot of artists that I saw him with pictures with everyone, no one said nothing. And I reckon it's because they're on those tapes. In the freak-offs, they're on the tapes. And they're thinking, if I say something, if Diddy don't like it, he's releasing my version. So, not today. There were a few other incidents of, P. Diddy and a gentleman got into an argument, and it got so heated that P. Diddy dragged them around just for standing up for himself, by the way. This person just stood up for himself. Diddy dragged him across the room and locked him in a closet. This is a house full of people, and he told no one, don't touch the closet, don't let him out, and he was in there for hours. And a house full of people, no one went in there to help the guy. This is told by his bodyguard, Gene, in one of the episodes. And I feel like if you're in a situation where you know what the right thing to do is never done, you're in a cult, you're in some kind of organization where you've sold your values, you've sold yourself, and it was just the clout. And I feel like that was the main thing of the documentary. When I got to the end, and I was really analyzing what happened with the jury, the verdict, one thing I felt like that ruined it was a lot of the jury, even the public, felt starstruck by Diddy, right? I found that annoying. Even one of the jurors, you can hear the way she talks. She sees him as a fan. She's a fan. She talks about loving the music, and she talks about one of the bands that he made. I think what was his favorite band, YB2, something like that. It was her favorite band, and she loved all the music. It's from her time. She's trying to say she's a fan without saying she's a fan. Well, we can all tell she's a fan. And people were looking at a celebrity, not a defendant. That alone made witnesses and victims feel like they weren't being taken seriously. Another thing which I don't understand is a jury is normally sequestered for a high-profile case like this. What that means is they're made to live in separate quarters, separate accommodation, away from they're not allowed to speak to their families, their friends, and it's only because they want to protect the integrity of the case and their judgment. But the last thing they want is the court of public opinion, you going on Instagram, seeing a couple posts, and the next thing you know, you don't even know what judgment that you're giving. Because now you're going against, a lot of people can be swayed by what they see on social media. However, this jury was not sequestered. They were allowed to go home, look at social media, look at posts. And P. Diddy was speaking to his lawyer at the beginning of the documentary, and you can tell he's very knowledgeable on how the narrative can guide a jury. He was knowledgeable on how it's important to control the narrative. He might have been watching Bounce's videos. Might be the second time I've mentioned that. But it's important to note, man, like a lot of people were swayed and easily swayed based on what they might have seen. And had they have been sequestered in a separate accommodation and they were only given the details of the case, the facts, I think they would have made a bit of a better decision. But that's hard to tell because I wasn't there. Another issue I think that ruined the guilty verdict being extended onto the racketeering and the bigger charges was the timing issue. Timing dropped credibility. It's very important as a victim, right? And I know I'm speaking out of turn, I'm speaking out of experience, but it's very important as a victim to bring your story and bring it to the light. The quicker it comes to the light, the less victims will be impacted. There's a graph that goes with this, right? The longer you keep it, the higher the victim count goes because the more confidence that comes from it. The last person is saying nothing. I don't think people say anything if I do this. P. Diddy probably got to the point where he felt like he wasn't even doing anything wrong because no one was calling him out. No one was saying anything. He was surrounded by yes men and yes women and people that were just there to be in his good books. And it was just this chase for clout that I think has absolutely ruined our people. It's ruined people, man. Even on social media now, you see some crazy stuff. Many of the accusations came years after they happened, which made fans question everything. Notice I said fans. They were fans in that jury. But even if the stories were number one, and I experienced this at the beginning of the documentary, the stories sounded so crazy, they have to be coming from imagination because I haven't experienced something in my life like that. Not to say it is imagination, but it's imagination to me because it hasn't happened in my real life. So that just made it all the more harder to understand and believe what the stories were saying. If you add that on top of the fact that this happened in 2008, 2007, 2009, the years back, some of the jury are going to be thinking, well, I did that back in 2008. I didn't go to jail. I don't think he should. Some of the jury are thinking, how can you remember the details of a story that long ago? And then all they need is 1 ounce of your story to not make sense. And then boom, you're done. Your credibility is shot. And you can't win credibility back in a court case. Once you go there, the jury either believes you or they don't. And because of the timing of it, the why now Why so late? How come you're bringing this story now? It fit into this narrative of the Diddy attack, right? When the court case was happening, there was a whole narrative being pushed, especially on social media, and I saw it. It was about Diddy's being attacked by the powerful elites. The elites are bringing down Diddy because he wanted to be the most powerful billionaire and he wanted to start an only black party parliament club. Now, this could be true, right? He could have been stepping on the wrong toes politically. However, when you look at the stories of the victims and you really get to understand what he did to people, I don't think this has anything to do with elite. I think this is someone who got on a power trip. He got on a power trip that no one stopped him on, and he kept doing until he met the wrong one who actually called him out. And then there were a few things, like he even like the CCTV footage of him, violently hitting that girl, dragging her across the floor in that hotel room. How can you be so callous that you forget there's cameras? He must have been, off the rocker. He must have been on substances. That's the only thing that makes sense. The court of public opinion shifts fast, and the delays in the stories, they kill credibility. So it's important for the stories to come to the light as soon as possible. There was also a fame obsession of people selling their souls. There were so many people around at this time. How is it that no one did anything? If you're telling someone a story, there was 50 people, but this person did that to that person and no one did nothing. It's like, come on. How is that possible? There's no way everyone stood around. But it's because so many people, everyone around them had sold in their souls. And they were willing to do anything for Diddy just to stay in his good books, to stay quiet. Even one of his best mates at the end of the documentary was talking about, yeah, I lied for him. I went on that stand and I lied for him. And when I asked Diddy for a favor, he said no. But when he called me, I went running. You have to have standards. You need to look yourself in the mirror and say, what am I going to stand up for? And where is my line, right? And you need to draw a line in the sand and say, that's too far. So I think really when it comes down to this, right? When fame blinds a jury, okay, timing kills credibility and people sell their souls, chaos can run free, untouched, without anyone doing anything. And that's why this has happened. I'm glad that he actually did a bit of jail time for a few of the crimes. However, in comparison to what he was facing, he did not, right? Again, power to the victims, power to their statements. And I really hope that you find a way to deal with this and to move on within your lives, whether that's talking to someone, whether that's getting professional help, whether that's, finding your coping mechanism. But I definitely send you love, and hopefully the nightmare's over, right? For Diddy specifically, brother, I hope you find Jesus, and I really hope you do, because one day he's gonna find you. God's gonna find you one day, bro, and he's gonna ask you what you did with all this influence, all this power that he gave you, all of this that God gave you. What did you do with it? And if your answer is this, let's just say the outcome of that conversation won't be favorable to yourself. But I've been Dave Reacts. Peace out.